Israel's war on Gaza grinds on with no ceasefire end in sight. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu lashed out Tuesday against the Biden administration, chastising the U.S. in a video for, quote, holding up weapons. Meanwhile, in Gaza, aid is slow. The $230 million pier built with U.S. taxpayer dollars is broken and considered a failure. Even with the lull in some of the fighting, there are new life-threatening challenges for the Palestinians who still live there. A new UN report says the level of destruction across Gaza has left more than 39 million tons of debris, intensifying an already dire health crisis. The UN says the rubble contains millions of tons of unexploded ordnance, asbestos, and other hazardous materials, along with human remains. The war in Gaza prompted outrage from Lily Greenberg, a Jewish American political appointee in the Biden administration. She tendered her resignation on May 15th, choosing the 76th anniversary of the Nakba, an Arabic word meaning catastrophe, used by Palestinians to describe how nearly 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly removed from the land. May 14th, 1948, is Israel's Independence Day.
Lily Greenberg Call is a special assistant to the Chief of Staff in the Interior Department. She posted her resignation letter on her X account, captioned, quote, "Today, I became the first Jewish American political appointee to resign from the Biden-Harris administration over its policies in Gaza." Now, in this letter, she writes that while she was excited to join the administration, she could, quote, no longer in good conscience continue to represent this administration amidst Biden's disastrous continued support for Israel's Gaza genocide. Kala is not the only political appointee to exit over Biden's Gaza policies. More than half a dozen administration officials have left as well, per multiple reports. Here to discuss further is Lily Greenberg Call. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we start by having you tell us why you decided you could no longer work for the administration?
So I mean, as I wrote in my letter, and as y'all just explained, I worked for the campaign. I was a member of the administration, or I was really excited to join the administration. I really valued the work that I was doing at the Department of Interior. And yet, once October 7th happened, that was something that impacted people in my community, people that I was close to. And I almost immediately realized that I was going to be out of alignment with how the administration was responding. And over these last 8 months, I have seen the president use the narrative of Jewish safety to justify continuing to not only support, but fund, and send Israel the weapons that it's using to kill nearly 40,000 innocent people, which doesn't make my community any more safe. Obviously, it's destructive for the Palestinians. And there came a point where I could no longer be in integrity with myself and, serve and represent this administration while the president is choosing to do this.
Lily, I have been in your position, having worked as a political appointee in previous administrations, and I understand the value of being in the room, getting access, just being in the mix and learning how government works. And you hope that one day you can take that and have an impact. So why not take that path, considering you were at the Interior Department, which has a historic appointee in Deb Haaland as the first Native American person to actually have oversight over what happens with Native American lands? There was still so much good you could have done.
Absolutely. And, what I'll say is this was just too close for me to stay. Even if the work that we were doing at Interior, as you said, it was historic, it was really meaningful work for Native communities, and I'm very honored to have been able to be a part of that and learned so much from my time there. But I really, from the beginning, tried to speak up in the channels that I could to administration leadership about how I felt, about to bring an alternative perspective, especially an alternative Jewish perspective that is not that alternative, right? That over half of American Jews want the president to stop sending offensive weapons to Israel. And I felt from the beginning that my perspective was not going to be listened to. It became very clear throughout these last 8 months that administration leadership was not willing to not only listen to the majority of people within the administration who are horrified about what the president and administration leadership have chosen to, enable Israel to do, but the majority of the American people, right, and the majority of American Jews. So I felt like if I had to, subsume my own values in order to stay, and that my perspective about what was really impacting people that I care about, both Israelis and Palestinians, wasn't being heard by administration leadership. I just realized that I could do more good from the outside, that there was no way to change policy on Israel from the inside.
And you probably saw something that most people don't see. The Interior Department in previous administrations has just been very bureaucratic, frankly, very white and male. Is there a sense now of solidarity after your work with Native communities?
Oh, you mean my own solidarity with Native communities? Or
Yeah, the idea of a generational connection. As you said, your opinion is not that off the mainstream of many Jewish people, but typically we would not be associating Jewish American identity with Native American identities on oppression issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, I was just able to have a much fuller understanding of what of the diversity and the richness of Indigenous life here in this country that is current, right? I think unfortunately a lot of non-Native Americans, because of the genocide of Native people that happened here, think of Native people as a fixture of the past, and that it could is absolutely so far from the truth. And I do feel a sort of extended closeness and solidarity with Native communities, and I do think there is, in particular among younger Jewish people, a sense of intersectionality, of how our issues are all connected, and I mean, really, to me, I was raised with an idea, unfortunately, that a lot of people have, both Jewish and non-Jewish, that Jewish safety and Palestinian freedom are somehow opposing. Our causes that are at odds with each other, and that we can't have one without the other. And the reality is that is a lie, because the only shared future for Israelis and Palestinians will necessitate Palestinian freedom, and Jewish safety and Palestinian freedom are only going to happen, in cohesion with each other. And so I think anything that allows people to have a further sense that all of our safeties are connected is an important development in creating a multiracial democracy that works for everyone.
So President Biden's Middle East policy here, his policy with respect to Gaza, has clearly alienated, infuriated many in the progressive wing, many young people, members of the Arab American community, including in the pivotal swing state of Michigan. You worked for the campaign, you worked in the government. What is your perspective on, if you can, maybe you weren't, exactly in Joe Biden's inner circle having daily conversations with him, but what do you think the top people there, do they not care? Do they think the progressives will end up voting for him anyway? Do they not perceive that this is as damaging as so many guests we've had on our show seem to say that it is? What would you guess is their thinking with respect to this issue? Or they're just so committed, they think this is the right policy, they'll suffer whatever political consequences will come as a result of it?
I think it's a combination of everything you just said. I think there's a lot of hubris involved, and I think there is this idea that that young people, that Black Americans, that Muslim Americans, that these are constituencies that are going to vote for the president no matter what. So there is, their votes are being taken for granted, and there is a sense, unfortunately, from people within, that this is just not as serious as an issue to so many voters as it is, that people are just going to have to get over it, which I think is horrible electoral strategy and political strategy, not to mention, the sort of moral implications of that. But yeah, I mean, I in Arizona in 2020, I organized young voters, college students across the campus or across the country on multiple campuses, and really saw these the president needs these people to win. These are not votes that he can take for granted. And we've seen, the NAACP take a stance about a ceasefire and against offensive weapons transfers. We know that these communities are taking this very seriously, and not even just, right. I mean, the majority of Democratic voters and the majority of Americans want a ceasefire. And for the the president's leadership and campaign leadership to ignore that and act like it's a somehow tertiary issue just shows a real disconnect to what's actually happening on the ground.
Yet at the same time, the Biden administration and all who follow Middle East policy know that Trump was bad when it came to declaring Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel, something the United States has never done. That's something that goes against international law. And then Trump continues to talk about his strong support for whatever right-wing Israeli perspective there is. Is there an argument to be made that Biden is the lesser of two evils?
So, I mean, I am personally terrified of another Trump presidency, which is in part why I worked for the campaign in 2020 and why I joined the administration, to have a chance to really make good on campaign promises. I think a Trump presidency would be disastrous for Palestinians, for Israelis, and for all the things that I care about here at home, abortion rights, meaningful action on climate change. And before October 7th, President Biden was in a lot of ways, the best president, the most progressive president that we've had in a long time, right? The administration has made really meaningful action on climate change. The IRA is an incredible piece of legislation. The president is destroying his legacy with this disastrous foreign policy, and he has a chance to save that legacy and also save American democracy. I mean, the thing that is so frustrating about this is it seems like President Biden is risking American democracy for Israeli leadership who do not want him in power either. The current Israeli government, the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, and the coalition would much prefer Trump to be in power. So he has an opportunity to save his legacy and save his presidency by choosing to stop sending offensive weapons to Israel and use all of the leverage at our disposal to actually broker, a real ceasefire deal, something that has teeth, right? Because you can't say that you want peace and you want a ceasefire and then continue sending Israel the weapons that it's using to massacre innocent people. I think the president still has time to win some of these voters over and to make those choices. But just because, just because he feels like he might be the lesser of two evils on this situation doesn't absolve him from doing the right thing and what he's, obligated to do to really listen to the American people.
And I will note that Trump has not said all that much about this conflict in general. I suspect he wants to leave his own policy position somewhat ambiguous, knowing that this is a issue that is hurting Biden with some of his base. He could very well have done the exact same thing or more or less. I think he actually wants to let people wonder what his policy might be, but perhaps it will come out in the debate. They will discuss this. Lily Greenberg Call, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.